I never expected to confront racism at my own wedding, until the shocking truth was revealed. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air was thick with excitement, laughter echoing around me as my heart raced. I stood in my gown, white and flowing, a cocoon of hope. The sun cast a golden hue, illuminating the faces of our friends and family. But deep down, I sensed a storm brewing. Kevin, my soon-to-be husband, looked dashing. He smiled broadly, every tooth shining with joy. I remember his hand brushing against mine, warm, grounding. But then, something changed. A whisper floated through the crowd, like a dark shadow creeping in. I didn't catch the words, just the tension in the air, thickening like fog. My mother, always so proud, beamed from the front row. Her eyes glistened, reflecting a love I cherished. But next to her sat Aunt Martha, arms crossed, face a mask of disapproval. It sent chills down my spine. Did she know something I didn't? Then, there was Maria, my best friend. Her laughter usually filled the space between my breaths, but today it was different. Unease clouded her bright smile. I caught her glancing at the entrance, brow furrowed, as if expecting someone. My heart sank. What was she worried about? As the ceremony began, a sudden hush fell. The officiant cleared his throat, the crowd's whispers fading into silence. I took a deep breath, ready to recite the vows I had rehearsed 100 times. But then, a loud voice broke through the tranquility. "You can't marry him." My heart stopped. Who would dare? I turned, eyes wide, searching the crowd. A man I didn't recognize, standing firm, conviction radiating from him like a fire. Gasps rippled among the guests, a wave of shock that left me trembling. He stepped forward, eyes burning with rage. "She deserves better." Panic surged through me. My mother gasped. Aunt Martha looked horrified. The tension escalated. Guests whispered fervently, confusion mingling with anger. Who was he? Why did his words cut so deep? I locked eyes with Kevin, seeking his strength. But his face was pale, a mix of disbelief and dread. The sweet moment we had envisioned shattered. The love we shared, now overshadowed by this unexpected confrontation. The world around me blurred. I wanted to scream, to push back against the chaos enveloping us. But instead, I stood frozen, heart racing, mouth dry. As the insults flew, the truth began to unfurl. Was this man's anger a reflection of deeper issues? What secrets surrounded Kevin's past? Questions clawed at my mind. The officiant tried to regain control, but it felt futile. A whirlwind of emotions swirled around me, each second stretching into eternity. The whispers, the stares, they all felt like a weight on my chest. What had begun as the perfect day was spiraling into a tragic mess. My hand shook as I clutched my bouquet, feeling the paper tight around my fingers. I searched the crowd again, longing to find solace. Would we recover from this? What truth lay hidden? My heart pounded wildly, echoing my fear. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The chaos swirled around me, each shout and gasp constricting my throat. My mind raced as the tension bled into my skin, turning the golden warmth of the day into a suffocating shroud. Kevin's eyes locked on mine, a silent plea for understanding, but the uncertainty reflected in his features only deepened my dread. "Who are you?" I finally managed to ask the man, my voice barely rising above the clamor. He stepped forward, jaw clenched, each word dripping with indignation. "In someone who cares about her. You deserve to know the truth." The crowd seemed to unite in split loyalty, half empathizing with him, half demanding silence. I felt the ground shift beneath me. In that moment, I remembered the stories. Kevin had always spoken of his childhood with a fondness that now felt tainted, dark secrets concealed behind sweet memories. Was this a part of that hidden past? What had I overlooked in my desire for the perfect life? Aunt Martha shifted uncomfortably in her seat, but her eyes didn't leave mine. There was concern in her expression, the kind that cut through the noise like a knife. "Laura," she murmured, her voice barely audible, yet heavy with meaning. Do you know him?" I managed, my words sharp and searching. I know of him," she said, her brows furrowed in worry. "He has been in and out of trouble. You need to be careful." But careful was not what I needed. I needed clarity. I needed Kevin to take my hand and tell me this was all a terrible misunderstanding. Instead, he stood frozen, the warmth of his earlier smile extinguished, leaving behind only the ghost of what should have been. I tried to process everything as anguished expression, the man's accusations, the swirling doubts. I felt an unexpected squeeze on my arm. I turned to see Maria beside me, her eyes sparkling with unspoken words, fierce yet compassionate. "You're not alone," she whispered, the strength in her voice anchoring me momentarily. "Help me," I blurted out, the pleading in my tone igniting something fragile within her. She nodded sharply, as if gathering the strength of all our years of friendship. Then, with a renewed resolve, I turned back toward the chaos. "Please let him speak. If you believe I deserve better, let me hear it." The crowd's murmur swelled, a monstrous wave of humanity. The man smirked, deepening the tumult in my heart. "You deserve the truth," he reiterated, his tone now almost taunting. "Kevin's family has a history, one that you're blissfully unaware of." He pointed dramatically, his finger stabbing the air with accusation. "His father, he's not who you think he is." Kevin's face morphed into a mask of fury. "Stop!" he yelled, his voice finally breaking free of the paralysis that held him captive. But the damage was done. Every eye in the crowd darted between us, hungry for answers. "Why don't you tell her?" the man goaded. "You think she's just marrying into wealth. But it's more than that. His parents, they don't accept." I stumbled, shaking my head, wishing the ground would open up and swallow me whole. I could feel the walls around me closing in, suffocating me with doubt. Was I really standing here, on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, grappling with such dark shadows? Before Kevin could respond, the officiant raised a hand, squeezing his eyes shut as if trying to block out the impending storm. "Enough. You can't destroy a moment like this with unverified claims." But it was too late. The layers of trust one had so diligently built with Kevin were now being questioned, unraveling like fragile thread. And amid the chaos, a familiar voice cut through, one I hadn't anticipated. "Laura." I turned towards the entrance, where a figure appeared, bathed in sunlight yet carrying a weight of sorrow. It was Kevin's mother, her face pale but determined. "Let's not do this here." "Not now." Every heart in the crowd raced, alive with curiosity and dread. What would she say? What truths would uncoil from her lips? I stood breathless, caught between hope and despair, and in that single moment, I understood. The storm was only starting. The air thrummed with anticipation as Kevin's mother stepped closer, her presence commanding the chaotic energy of the crowd. She looked vulnerable, the creases of worry etched across her forehead betraying the calm facade she tried to project. My heart drummed in my chest, a furious beat echoing the turbulence brewing inside of me. "Please, gather your thoughts," she urged, addressing both the crowd and the man who had ignited this tempest. "This isn't the place for this discussion." Her voice wavered slightly, and I caught a glimpse of vulnerability that felt oddly out of place amidst the swirling accusations. Why should we listen to you? The man shot back, his voice dripping with derision. You hide behind your wealth, while people like us suffer the consequences of your family's legacy. Kevin's fists clenched at his sides, the tension radiating from him palpable and unsettling. Stop it, Matt. Just stop. His voice cracked, an uncharacteristic break that reminded me of the boy I had fallen for, stripped of bravado and full of raw emotion. Let her talk, Kevin. The gravity of his mother's tone silenced the crowd, pulling their attention fully towards her. Laura, she began, her gaze settling on me, searching my eyes for understanding. "To want you to know that there are things about our family that aren't easy to discuss. It's not about wealth or social status, it's deeper than that." She paused, her breath shallow and hurried, and I could see the tears pooling in her eyes. "Your relationship with my son has been a light during the darkest times." The tremor in her voice broke my heart. "But you need to understand that our family's history is marred by prejudice and expectation, an insidious undercurrent that has shaped Kevin's world." A chill ran down my spine as her words hung in the air, heavy like a storm cloud. All at once, memories flashed. The jaded looks from members of his family during holidays, the subtle comments that lingered in the air, the cold anchorage of unspoken truths. Was everything I had brushed off as mere misunderstandings woven into a more complex and painful narrative? "Just who are we to each other?" I whispered, my voice barely audible, almost swallowed by the brewing storm. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. It felt as if the very foundations of our love were being called into question. "I wish I could explain everything," she said softly, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. "I love my son, but I've seen what it means to endure the roar of shame and rejection." Kevin stepped forward, his face taut with an indescribable mix of anger and sadness. "Mom, enough. You're risking everything for secrets that should have remained buried." He turned towards me, desperation written all over his face. "Please, don't listen to him or any of this. It doesn't matter," but it mattered. The stubborn truth, heavy and undeniable, wrested itself free from the shadows. "Who are you, Kevin? Who are we?" He was silent, and in that silence, I felt my heart splintering, tilting over the precipice of what I thought I knew. The crowd swayed uncomfortably. Curiosity and judgment sparked in their eyes. They were desperate for resolution just as much as I was. There was a strange bond forming in the tension, a collective exhale waiting for clarity. Suddenly, I caught a movement out of the corner of my eye, a flicker of life struggling for attention, and I turned to see Maria kneeling beside Aunt Martha, whispering frantically, as if she were piecing together the shrapnel of broken expectations. Just then, she looked up, her brow furrowed with urgency. "Laura," she called, her voice piercing through the thick tension. "There's something else." The crowd hushed, a collective intake of breath waiting for the additional weight she bore. The look on her face, a mixture of dread and determination, filled me with a sense of impending doom. As Maria stepped forward, I braced myself for the uncertain future that awaited me, a mixture of fear and fragile hope swirling violently around us. What new layer of complexity would this reveal? And what would it mean for the love I believed was unwavering? "Laura," Maria continued, her voice trembling slightly, "it's about your father." That single statement hung in the air like an unrelenting war cry, echoing destinies entwined in a web of history I had yet to unravel. What could there possibly be that connected my family to this tumult? The world around me constricted, and I felt the solidity of the ground fade beneath my feet. I locked eyes with Kevin, his expression a reflection of uncertainty and fear. The storm was reaching a crescendo, and I was caught right in the eye of it, swept away in a torrent that promised no respite. What lay ahead remained shrouded in shadows. But one thing was certain: the truth was far older and deeper than I had ever realized. The storm of whispered conversation surged again, a tide of uncertainty crashing against the confidence I had relied upon. The weight of Mariah's words bore down on me, and the world blurred around the edges. My father? I echoed, my voice unsteady, questioning if I had truly heard her right. Yes, Maria said, her voice firming up with the urgency of the moment. I found something your father wrote before he passed. Eat a letter that, well, it explains a lot about your family, your mother, even about Kevin's family. I felt Kevin's hand tighten around my wrist, a grounding force in the swelling sea of doubt that threatened to engulf me. Laura, you don't have to listen to this, he said softly, but his gaze darted nervously between my face and the faces of the crowd, which now seemed more hostile than concerned. Please, let her finish, Aunt Martha urged, her eyes locked onto Maria, desperate for answers that had long been hidden away. The crowd leaned in, its breath bated, as if held captive by the suspense of revelation. What could it possibly be about? I asked, my heart racing wildly as I recalled the tales of my father's struggles, the quiet integrity he embodied throughout his life. He had battled his demons alone, often retreating into the corners of his own mind. What kind of truth had he penned that might intertwine with the horrors I was facing now? Maria took a step forward, the tension draping her figure like a cloak. He wrote about the prejudices he faced when he married your mother, about how he had to navigate the hostility from both sides, and how it affected you. Her voice cracked with the burden of the truth. He felt he couldn't protect you from it. He thought maybe if he kept the past buried, it would spare you the pain. Stop, Maria, Kevin said, stepping forward. I could sense the protective instinct rising in him, but in that moment it felt misplaced. I needed knowledge, even if it came wrapped in uncertainty. I think it would be better if you read it, Maria persisted, her determination vibrant against the shaky cadence of the moment. He left it for you, Laura. It's in your mother's things, next to his old journals. Why didn't you tell me this before? I shouted, frustration surging through me, as if I could cut water with sheer will. You kept this from me all this time? Her voice faltered. I wanted to protect you, but maybe I was wrong. The truth will hurt, but it might help you understand what you're facing today. I tried to digest her words, my mind churned with possibility. The foundation of my identity shifted beneath me as old family stories I had taken for granted unraveled before my eyes like smoke. Kevin, sensing the storm escalating inside me, reached out, cupping my cheek gently. Laura, no matter what you find, this is us. We're still here, still fighting together, right? I could feel the desperation in his touch and the resolve he radiated, but how could I reconcile that with the tidal wave of uncertainty now crashing around me? But what if the truth is more than both of us can handle? I faltered, my breath coming shallowly. Then we'll face it together, he promised, his sincerity softening the hardness in my heart, even if just a fraction. But the crowd's whispers slithered through the air, a dissonant backdrop to our fragile bond. The accusations had morphed into an uncomfortable alliance of unity against the unacknowledged histories we all carried, me betrayal, Kevin's inherited legacy, our hopes for the future. Suddenly, a woman in the crowd, an older lady surprisingly reminiscent of my father's gentle demeanor, stepped forward. What Maria is saying might help all of us. We've all been living with shadows of the past, she began, her voice trembling but firm. But it's time we stopped letting those shadows dictate our future. It's time for the truth. Visions of our future, the wedding, the dreams we'd woven together hazed in my mind, tainted by the monster we had yet to confront. What if we don't recognize each other when all these truths come crashing down? I whispered, fear knotting my stomach. You will, Kevin assured me, his resolve wearing thin like the last thread of a fraying tapestry. But his eyes held mine, refusing to let go. As the crowd started murmuring again, a wave of hostility from those who saw themselves as victims of our histories, I sensed the impending fracture. Would I still recognize the man who had once held my heart, or was this insatiable storm going to rip our love into tatters? Laura, Maria called again, her voice breaking through the chaos, a lifeline thrown amidst the tide. You deserve to know. You deserve truth now, before it's too late. I closed my eyes for one lingering moment, the crowd fading away. I envisioned my father's hands crafting a letter filled with love, pain, and revelations, the echo of his voice whispering truths long buried. "I'll read it," I finally said, the decision heavy yet lightening my chest just the same. But before I could follow through, the clouds darkened. A figure detached itself from the crowd, stepping toward us with purpose and unexpected presence piercing through the noise. I couldn't help but wonder if this was the beginning of answers that would shatter my understanding, or if it was merely another layer of the treacherous web that ensnared us all. And just like that, the storm raged on, the future hanging by a thread, inching closer to the fork in the road where all would be revealed, even as shadows of doubt tangled around my heart. The sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting long shadows over the trembling crowd, and I could feel the coolness of the evening air wrap around me like an unwelcome embrace. Kevin's hand remained firmly on my cheek, grounding me despite the chaos swirling just beyond our bubble. I could hear my heartbeat echoing in my ears, drowning out the cacophony of whispers, gasps, and desperate assertions from those desperate for answers and resolution. "Laura!" Maria's voice cut through again, more urgent this time, like a knife slicing through the thick, charged atmosphere. "You deserve to know the truth about your father, about your family. We have all carried this burden for far too long." A rush of emotion surged within me. Anger, confusion, fear, and an unexpected flicker of curiosity. I took a small step toward her, wrestling with an internal battle that raged within me. As much as I wanted the truth, I feared what it might mean to confront the ghosts of my father's past. In that moment, the man whose presence had been merely a silhouette against the backdrop of the crowd stepped into the fading light. "Laura," he called, his voice low and steady, capturing not just my attention, but that of everyone around us. My heart raced as recognition pricked through the fog of anxiety. It was Victor, the man whose name had haunted our family history, had been my father's best friend before everything had fallen apart. "What are you doing here?" I stammered, emotion spilling into my voice like ink down a page, dyeing every word with uncertain familiarity. The crowd fell silent, eyes shifting back and forth between us, anticipation crackling in the air. "I came to help you, to protect you from what you're about to hear," he said, his expression a blend of concern and sorrow. "Maria has good intentions, but some truths can tear families apart even further." I felt Kevin tense beside me, his grip on me tightening in protective silence. "Protect her from what?" he asked, every syllable edged with defiance. "The truth? You think hiding it will do her any good?" Victor shook his head slowly, the lines on his face deepening with memory and remorse. "Some truths aren't just painful. They redefine who we are, reshape who we might become. I don't want Laura to be swept away in a storm she's not ready for. But she deserves to know," Kevin replied, determination sparking in his voice. "You don't get to decide what she can or can't handle. You didn't have a say in her life then, and you certainly don't have one now. Enough!" I exclaimed, my voice breaking through like a fault line rumbling beneath our feet. "If this is about my father and my family, then it's my choice to hear it. I've been living with half-truths for too long. I want to understand. I need to understand." The silence that stretched between us felt heavy, almost suffocating. It became clear that the crowd held their breath, waiting for a revelation that would breach the tense familiarity of unspoken words and painful histories. Maria, seemingly emboldened by my declaration, stepped forward again with a small, tattered envelope clutched in her hand. "I found this among your mother's belongings," she said, her voice firm as she handed it to me, her fingers lingering just a moment longer, as if to imbue me with courage. "Open it. This holds the answers you seek." The air thickened as I took the envelope, its surface worn and fragile like the delicate truths it contained. I hesitated, an unsteady tremor coursing through my fingers. "Do you realize what you're asking of me?" I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else. "To peel back the layers of pain to open wounds that may never fully heal." Victor stepped closer, his eyes earnest and piercing. "The past has a way of casting shadows that can stifle the light we strive for, Laura. But knowing the truth behind it can liberate you. We can help each other. Let's not bury this anymore." As I clutched the envelope against my heart, emotions swirled like leaves caught in a whirlwind. I could see the faces of my family reflected in the crowd. Some wore expressions of anticipation while others twisted with fear that perhaps those buried truths would unravel everything they held dear. Taking a deep breath, I felt Kevin's weight shift beside me, his presence radiating strength and encouragement, propelling me forward despite my uncertainty. "We can bear this together," he urged softly. With a sudden surge of resolve, I tore open the envelope, the sound echoing like the cracking of ice beneath my weight. My heart raced as I pulled out the folded letter, an anchor to my own identity, my history. But just as I unfolded it, the hushed murmurs and furtive glances turned into a crescendo of shocked gasps, as Victor blurted out a name one not mentioned in the whispers before. "You need to know the truth about your real family ties, Laura. It connects to more than just your father's struggles. It involves Kevin's family too." The realization shot through my veins, a cold fire igniting every nerve ending. Every face turned toward Kevin, and I could see confusion and horror ripple through the crowd. What did he mean? In that instant, the fabric of everything I believed tore apart, exposing a truth more dangerous than the storm itself. I looked at Kevin, whose expression mirrored my own bewilderment. "Wait, what are you saying?" The words hung heavy in the air, trembling with the weight of uncertainty, as the crowd parted like the sea before us. I finally saw through the haze, the storm of secrets ready to lay bare our lives, a future now intertwined in ways I could never have anticipated, and a pivotal moment that would seal our fates. The envelope trembled in my hands, a delicate promise of truths long hidden. I could almost hear my heart thud loud enough to drown out the hum of anxious voices around me. Kevin's eyes searched mine, his brows furrowed, turmoil mirrored in the depths of his gaze. Victor stood to the side, as if inviting the ghosts of our past to join us, watching with a mix of apprehension and hope. I closed my eyes for a moment, gathering my thoughts, but all I could see were shadows that danced in the corners of my memory, mocking me with questions I had never dared to ask before. "You said my real family ties. What are you talking about?" I demanded, the authority in my voice surprising even myself. I fought to hold on to the strength bubbling up, trying to keep hold of the terrain beneath my feet as the foundations of my life began to tremor. "Laura," Kevin said softly, his voice like a balm on my frayed edges. "Whatever this is, we'll figure it out together." It was a lifeline, but as comforting as his words were, they couldn't shield me from the anxiety gnawing at my insides. "Victor, you need to explain." "Now," I breathed, trying to focus on his face, searching for any sign of reassurance, yet all I saw was the weight of history etched on his features. "Your family Laurier father was not just a victim of circumstance. His decisions, driven by fear and desperation, led to alliances you know nothing about. Kevin's family, they were also inextricably linked to the events that tore apart your lives," Victor said, each word laced with gravity. The crowd buzzed with unrest, a living tapestry of gasps cascading through the air. I felt the heat of their scrutiny raise goosebumps on my skin. Kevin's hand on my shoulder felt like a lifeline tethering me to the present, yet it was also a reminder that the truth could sever more than it could heal. "This isn't just about your father. It's about the choices made long before you were born," Victor explained, and the tension in his voice hinted at revelations I could barely comprehend. "Those choices affected everything, including how people perceived you and your family. People have lived in fear. They resonated with discomfort any time your family name was mentioned. A ripple effect of misunderstanding and prejudice thrust upon innocent lives. I held my breath, keeping my gaze fixed on Kevin. The question scrabbled inside my mind, desperate for release. Did he know this? Did he carry the same burdens I did, the weight of an ancestral lineage built on fear and resentment? Laura, Kevin began, but the storm roiling within me quelled his voice as I raised my hand. Just give me a minute, I murmured, desperate to sort through the swirling confusion. My sentiments were a tangle of disbelief and disbelief. How could I expect answers tied to lineage to make sense in the midst of a world already overwhelming? Maria, still lingering near, spoke up. There is more to this than meets the eye. Families like ours have been fighting against a tide of prejudice. You both deserve to know what has been buried for so long, she implored, her eyes pleading. A small spark of defiance ignited within me, pushing through the fog of uncertainty. You're saying racism has been woven into our histories? I said, testing the conviction in my voice. The legacy of fear is the excuse behind the pain my family has carried? Victor nodded solemnly, the weight of his past visible in his weary expression. But with understanding comes the chance to change it, to mend what's been fractured. You need to understand that families can also learn to forgive. You're not alone in this fight. Forgive? The word echoed hollow, bouncing between us like a defiant spirit. Was forgiveness truly attainable when the past felt like a prison? A soft murmur of recognition passed through the crowd, me small world crashing against the larger society's prejudices. I glanced at Kevin, still holding that thoughtful gaze, and suddenly it seemed as though our separate griefs had collided, merging into something new. Yet, beneath it all lingered a shadow of doubt. And what if we can't forgive? I ventured, my voice trembling with raw honesty. What if confronting the truth tears us apart instead of bringing healing? The silence that enveloped us was thick and palpable, each breath a reminder of the weight hanging in the air. It was then I noticed a quiet figure toward the back of the crowd, someone whose face I hadn't registered before. The woman stood with the poise of someone who had weathered storms, her dark hair streaked with gray, eyes shimmering with experiences hidden from sight. As our eyes locked, something in her expression ignited a spark of recognition deep within me, as if the threads of fate were pulling tighter toward an unexpected conclusion. Just then, the woman stepped forward, her voice trembling, but steady. Laura, I am here to tell you that I've seen the ramifications of these histories firsthand, she began softly. And it's time you understood the true depth of what binds us all together, beyond anger and pain. Every eye turned to her, and I felt my heart race anew. What could she possibly reveal about me, about us, that would shift the very landscape of everything I thought to know? A sense of foreboding hung heavy as I fought to steady my breathing. Who are you? I whispered, anticipation curling tightly in my chest. I am your grandmother, she replied, and in that instant, the ground beneath my feet felt less certain than ever, teetering on the edge of revelation and despair. The truth that had been stitched from the shadows was finally surfacing, ready to embroil our lives in uncertainty, and sparks of hope, a faint light glowing bravely inside the storm. The air shifted abruptly, the energy in the room warping into something unrecognizable. My grandmother's admission hung before me like a threadbare tapestry, revealing intricate patterns of sorrow stitched with threads of joy, love, and deep-rooted conflict. The gathered crowd seemed to waver, their collective incredulity palpable. Kevin's grip on my shoulder tightened, an anchor amidst the swirling chaos. Your grandmother? The name rolled off my tongue softly, almost an afterthought. How was it that I had lived 27 years without a hint of her existence? A flood of questions crashed upon me. Where had she been all these years? Why was she here now? Did she know about my father? Or my mother? With a deep breath, I summoned a shaky sense of bravery. Why didn't I know about you? The words felt like molten glass, sharp and difficult to utter. I was unable to contain the depth of my yearning to understand the seeds of despair and hope buried within our family tree. My grandmother stepped closer, her presence both comforting and unnervingly distant. Life twisted our paths apart, Laura. When your father made his choices, it was as though a chasm opened between us. He feared for your safety, carried burdens I only wish he hadn't. Her voice, though gentle, pulsed with the weight of unspoken history. Victor moved forward, his brow knitted. These stories aren't isolated. There are echoes throughout our community. Stories layered like the pages of a book, longing to be read. His eyes darted between me and my grandmother, speaking to the urgency of his conviction. Your connection runs deeper than blood. It intertwines with the histories of many others. This is not merely your individual legacy. There are generations waiting for someone like you to help bridge the divide. The contrast of his words resonated in the hollow of my chest. My instinct fought against it. Slowly, a sense of betrayal unfurled, relentless and heavy. My world felt like a series of mirrors showing distorted reflections of past actions, past decisions, that had led me to this moment. I turned to Kevin, desperate for his grounding presence, hoping for some unshakable understanding mirroring what I feared in my own heart. "Laura," he said softly, leaning in, the warmth of his breath brushing against my ear. "This is a lot. But maybe this is exactly what you need. Who knows what this journey could reveal about forgiveness? Forgiveness." The word curled around me, suffocating yet strangely seductive. Could I really? My grandmother offered a tender smile, adding weight to the swirling tension. There is power in reclaiming the lost stories, in facing the fears and regrets. We suffer together and heal together. It isn't easy. It's a complicated dance of truths. But I hesitated, looking away for a moment, the tide of my thoughts battling between anger and desire for connection. What were those choices? What did my father have to do that severed our family? She inhaled deeply, exhaling a sigh that rattled through me. Your father tried to shield you from the past, his mistakes catching up too quickly and too brutally. Decisions made in frenzy cannot unmake what is already written in our histories. He ran away from those realities, thinking he kept you safe. But the truth is you deserve to know your roots. Each word carved a little more space for anger to pulse through my veins, heating my cheeks. Is it as simple as lost roots? I questioned, grappling with the bewildering whirlpool of emotions. Nothing is simple, Laura, she replied, her eyes dark with limitless understanding. The stories are entwined with pain and racism, yes, influencing every choice and consequence. It sparked wars and walls even before you existed. But through them, legacies of resilience were born. I struggled against the tidal wave of mixed emotions as I glanced back at Kevin, who met my gaze with the softness of a flame flickering in the harsh darkness. His eyes remained locked on mine, full of unwavering conviction and care. "You don't have to manage this weight alone," he whispered, his thumb brushing my cheek. In that moment, I felt the slightest shift, a flicker of warmth in the gaze of my estranged grandmother, and a stronger sense of longing ignited. But as the warmth spread, shadows remained. The ache of anger tinged with hope created a paradox within me, stirring questions of where this journey would take us, and whether I would find the courage to tread its pathways. "Whatever I choose to understand or forgive can't erase what my father did," I murmured, more to myself than anyone else. But as uncertainty clung to my words, the crowd began to stir, a small ripple of discomfort shifting among the gathering. Just then, the tension broke with a sudden outcry from someone standing at the back, a figure who had watched silently until that very moment. "You don't understand. It isn't just the fears from the past that bind you, it's the present. The truth may set you free, but it can also put you in danger." An unexpected rush of adrenaline coursed through my veins as I turned to see a familiar face from my childhood come forward, a friend lost long ago, one who had once faced the brunt of that ancestral pain. In the depths of his eyes, I recognized the weight of our shared histories, swirling with the echoes of wounds both opened and mended. As doubt flooded my senses anew, all the threads began weaving together before me, pulling tighter, until the tension became unbearably taut. I felt as though I were at the center of a web, a junction of conflicting truths, intimately aware that this confrontation would ripple into the world beyond the gathered crowd, unraveling the strands I'd been too frightened to examine. And just like that, the door to understanding swung wide open, revealing a tumult of voices, histories, and echoes of resentment I had never anticipated. The path forward loomed precariously close. Where would it lead? The air around me thickened, the shock waves of my childhood friend's arrival rippling through the crowd like a pebble dropped in still water. Confusion flared within me as memories scraped at the edges of my consciousness. Sam. I hadn't seen him in over a decade, yet here he stood, that familiar intensity flickering behind his eyes. I could almost hear the ghosts of laughter we once shared, intertwined with moments of confusion when we were just kids trying to make sense of a world that often felt hostile against the backdrop of our neighborhood. Sam, I breathed, the name escaping my lips in a mixture of disbelief and vulnerability. What are you doing here? He stepped closer, earnestness etching deep lines across his brow. I've followed the path of your family's story, Laura. I couldn't believe it when I heard about the reunion and your grandmother's arrival. The past isn't something we can outrun, despite our attempts. His voice softened, a reminder of shared struggles, nuanced by the tension that loomed in the room. You think you're alone? This history binds us all. With each word, I felt the ground shift beneath me again, as if we were standing on a crumbling edge. My grandmother's eyes flickered over to Sam, a hint of acknowledgement passing between them that ignited further questions I was not ready to voice. What connection did they share? How deeply did our lives intertwine amidst the complexities of ancestry and suffering? Laura, your grandmother's secrets are heavier than you know, he warned, his tone imbued with a sense of urgency. She has lived through the repercussions of those choices, like your father, like me. There are discussions we need to have about what truly happened back then. And it's tied to the hatred festering even now. What do you mean? My heart raced, caught between the familiar comfort of the past and the new turbulence swirling around me. What are you implying? His breaths were uneven as he surveyed the room, eyes shimmering with the weight of unshared burdens. Our community has always been under siege, Laura. Your family's actions echo in ways you can't even begin to understand. My childhood shouldn't be a casualty of someone else's regrets. The soft chatter of the crowd dimmed, the collective energy shifting as everyone honed in on our confrontation. Tension lay thick on the air, and I felt exposed, like a spark in a dry field preparing to ignite something vast and powerful. My hands trembled, caught between the urge to reach out to Sam and the instinct to retreat to the safety of oblivion. And what of my father? I asked, my voice trembling. What exacerbate other scars? Tell me the truth, then. The emotions screamed to be released, a mix of hope, despair, and confusion threatening to overflow. Was he not there to protect me? Was he a coward? Sam shook his head vigorously, stepping closer. He was brave, but sometimes strength manifests in misguided ways. His strategy to shield you took root in fear, Laura. But those roots grew bitter, intermingling with racism, with betrayal, and they have yet to be severed. You're here, seeking answers. They may not be pretty, but they're yours to uncover. My grandmother, her presence eclipsing the full brunt of the truth, finally spoke again. You don't realize how deep this wound goes, Laura. Your father made decisions based on a past he believed he could protect you from, but he couldn't save himself from the truth. Some decisions pushed families apart. Others created bridges for reconciliation, but bridges can only hold if both sides are willing to walk across. I felt my chest tighten, wrestling against the dizzying revelations flooding my mind. The corner of my vision caught the flicker of Kevin's reassuring figure, his gaze steadfast and encouraging. But the louder echo came from a cacophony of uncertainty, as I grappled with these new burdens I didn't ask to carry. And at that moment, the crowd shifted restlessly, the anxiety in the room morphing into quiet speculation. Eyes darted like shipwrecked souls, drifting between castaway shores, each unspoken question blazing like a beacon of turmoil. It seemed we weren't the only ones standing at the precipice of revelation. Our narratives had tangled and ensnared more stories, more people than I could fathom. I can't, I sighed, the weight of all the revelations pressing down with an unforgiving heft. I can't face this alone. As if orchestrated by fate, a woman from the crowd stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. You shouldn't have to, dear. We've carried these burdens together long enough. It's time to stand side by side and pull back the veil. Her kindness washed over me, a fleeting glimmer of hope amidst desolation. It reminded me of light filtering through storm clouds, promising that perhaps, just perhaps, healing could emerge from understanding. But just as I was about to reach for that thread, another figure emerged from the shadows of the gathering crowd, a face I recognized all too well. My heart plummeted as I met his gaze. My father. He stood there, uncertainty etched across his features, the turbulent past threading its way between us like the vines of a suffocating maze. In that moment, the web tightened around me, and the culmination of my emotional struggle reached a fever pitch, raw and piercing. I felt the dual forces of desire and dread clash within me as I faced my father once more, history converging into an inevitable confrontation. As uncertainty cascaded swiftly around me, I realized this was just the beginning. There was more to discover, more from which we would need to forge clarity and connection, or perhaps find division. The silence hung in the air like the stillness before a storm, igniting all my fears and hopes at once. Would we find reconciliation, or would uncovering the truth lead to further chasms of despair? The weight of my father's presence was suffocating. It felt like every moment we had shared or failed to share played out in flashes across my mind. The year he left, the birthdays he missed, the silence that transformed our home into a hollow space. Unable to tear my gaze away from him, I fought against the wave of memories crashing over me, each one a jagged reminder of the years lost to misunderstanding. Dad, I managed, the single word trembling on my lips. The room held its breath, as if time itself had paused, mirroring the turmoil I felt within. Why now? Why here? He took a faltering step forward, his expression a tempest of emotions. I didn't know how to face you, Laura. Your grandmother's past is tied to mine, and I didn't want to me not being there. It was a choice, but I realize now, it was the wrong one. Is that your excuse? You chose to be absent. You chose silence. My voice soared on a wave of hurt I thought I had buried long ago, unearthing feelings of resentment I thought were tucked neatly away. All this time, you could have come back, you could have said something. His face darkened, emotions flickering like the dying flames of a fire. You're right. I was a coward, Laura. But it wasn't a fear of you. It was fear of facing the past, of admitting my own mistakes. And there's so much I'm ashamed of. Shame runs deep in our family, and it's easier to run than to confront. Sam's intense gaze shot between us, the pendulum of tension swinging wildly, as he followed the intricate dance of confession. Running, hiding, those were choices, your choices. They created gaps in the fabric of our community, which let hatred seep through, unraveling everything we tried to stitch back together. His voice bore the weight of urgency again. But you can be the ones to mend it, to challenge the legacy of pain. The unexpected warmth of a hand clasped around my own pulled me out of the tumult of past failures. I turned to see the woman whose quiet strength had resonated before. Her name slipped my mind, but her smile was comforting. Like a lifeline. We need to have this conversation, all of us, she said gently, although the firmness of her grip spoke louder than her words. The past is inescapable, but we cannot challenge it if we remain fractured. We need to come together to heal for ourselves and for the generations that followed. My heart trembled between despair and an inkling of hope. But how? How do we even begin to unravel the history that divides us? Especially when the very air around us is laced with pain. Before Sam could respond, a ripple of whispers surged through the crowd, breaking the tension like glass shattering against stone. I turned to see a group of young activists stepping forward, their energy electrifying, fanned by anger and the desire for justice. "You want to know how?" one of them exclaimed, her defiance palpable. "You start by listening to us. You start by admitting that your family's choices weren't isolated incidents. They helped shape a climate of fear and bigotry. And fear is contagious. My heart raced, responding instinctively to the fervor of their voices. These weren't just strangers declaring their outrage. They were echoes of the very struggles I could barely articulate. Each word they spoke was a reminder that my family's actions had long-reaching consequences beyond what any of us knew. I caught a glimpse of my grandmother's pained expression, watching as the generations confronted one another. Beneath her stoicism was something fragile, an acknowledgement that perhaps, just perhaps, there were stories she had kept buried to protect us from the darkness of our lineage. "Laura," my father said, desperation entwined with repentance. "I will listen. Help me understand like I should have long ago. My breath caught as I bore witness to the thread of vulnerability that wove between us, exposing the raw edges of unhealed wounds. The room felt electric, a metaphorical tapestry being rewoven at that very moment, but doubt still taunted me. Was this genuine, or yet another facade of promises that would ultimately fracture under scrutiny? As my father and I locked eyes, time twisted, a thunderous silence engulfing the space once more. I was caught in the maelstrom of everything that was, and everything that could be. The mere act of opening the door to reconciliation felt monumental, yet shrouded in uncertainty. What if he faltered again? The sound of soft sobbing broke the tension, drawing me back into the present. It was a woman in the crowd, stricken with emotion. "I've been lost in my own anger and grief for too long," she said, her voice cracking. "Thank you for allowing us to witness this, because I need to heal too." "We all do." As the sobs rippled through the crowd, a wave of understanding washed over me. In the midst of fallout and conflict, there lay glimmers of connection permeating the fabric of despair. Our stories could weave together in ways that broke barriers, if only we were brave enough to confront the truth. But just as I felt the tide turning toward hope, a blast of commotion erupted from the back of the crowd. The doors swung open, and in strode an uninvited guest, someone whose very presence knocked the air from my lungs, creating a vortex of uncertainty. The unmistakable figure of my estranged mother stood there, her eyes sharp with unyielding resolve. "Did I hear you all talking about our family's hidden past?" she asked, her voice dripping with a history I had never wanted to confront. "Because there's so much more to this story than any of you realize." My heart raced, the ground shifting once more beneath me. His was the revelation I never anticipated, a new chapter waiting to unfold amidst the already tumultuous tide of our lives. Would this lead us toward understanding, or pull even harder at the tender threads of hope we had just started to weave? The room descended into a tangible silence, a thick fog of uncertainty descending with the abruptness of my mother's entrance. Her figure loomed before us, a complex tapestry of love and resentment, of disappointment and hope that had anchored my life since childhood. I hadn't seen her in nearly a decade, having disconnected her presence from any semblance of my future, and yet here she was, clad in an aura that spoke of unaddressed history, her voice heralding vibrations of truth I had been terrified to face. "Mom," I managed, the word escaping my lips as though it were a fragile whisper caught in the wind. The crowd stirred, tentative eyes darting between us, bridging the invisible rift that had severed our connection for so long. "Laura, we need to talk about this," she said, her gaze unfaltering. Somewhere within her stern expression lay remnants of warmth, the ghost of a mother who had once held me close, who offered stories wrapped in a comfort blanket woven of unconditional love until secrets had pulled her away from me. Why now? I pushed, my heart clenching as conflicting emotions surged. Why show up today at my wedding? You could have done this years ago. I felt layers of anger heap upon the sadness lodged in my throat. You chose to leave when I needed you the most. Her eyes shimmered, a storm brewing within their depths. I was trying to protect you, she replied, her voice urgent yet filled with a quiet desperation. There are truths tied to our family that extend beyond the pain. It's not just your father's regrets. There are roots that bind us to systemic issues that have persisted for generations, a legacy of racism and betrayal. And you, Laura, deserve answers. You're caught in the crossfire of it all. My heart raced as the room began to pivot. The gathered families, once there to celebrate love, now stood witness to a history that was violently unwoven with every confession. The weight of unspoken layers pressed against my chest, and I found myself drowning in a current of emotions as I vacillated between anger at her abandonment and the innate desire to understand what had truly happened, not just for me, but for us all. I deserve to know, I echoed, the incredulity in every syllable taut against the fabric of grief. You left me in the dark. You didn't think I could handle the truth back then? Or was it too uncomfortable for you? The bitterness poured from my heart, each word an incision that split open the wounds. She flinched slightly, but her resolve was unwavering. I was wrong, Laura. I thought keeping our lives buried would shield you from the pain, but it only compounded our suffering. I've learned that hiding never heals. Her gaze shifted away from me, landing on my grandmother, who nodded slowly, understanding etched into her features. But together we can confront this and find a way to mend. It's what my own mother believed, and it's what my heart has yearned to do. To help you reclaim what's been lost. Confusion churned within me like a maelstrom unfurling. Could I truly trust these words, these promises spoken now, when every ounce of faith in her had been reduced to ash over the years? What do you mean? I asked, a crack threading through my voice. How do you expect us to move forward? A collective breath grasped the spaces between us. The tension reverberated like a string ready to snap. A small committee of the crowd began to murmur amongst themselves, their debates filling the air with buzzing worry and anticipation. You deserve to know that your family has been part of a larger story, my mother continued. There are struggles that overlap, incidents of hatred, of love that clash. I was part of a community that turned its back on what it failed to understand, and in doing so, I lost you, all of you. The fabric of our lives was ruptured. With every breath I took, it felt as if the very essence of my existence was being rewritten in real time. The storm within me continued, relentless. The very weight of history loomed like a shadow tethering itself to my heart. Then tell me, I implored, the urgency palpable. Tell me what I don't know. The parts that could tear our family apart. Your father's past isn't just his story, she began, her voice steadying with each word. It's woven with mine, with your grandmother's, and with our shared communities. When we fell in love, there were whispers, stigma, prejudice that followed us. I wanted to raise you in a world free of those burdens, but the truth was, we couldn't escape it. Our identities are intertwined with shadows of others lost to fear. Each unraveling phrase twisted in my heart, and the facade began to crumble. As her truths echoed around us, I felt the silent burden lift, replaced with a bittersweet realization of the depth of my lineage of beauty and cruelty that lived within it, begging for acknowledgement. Then Kevin stepped closer, his warmth enveloping me. Laura, he said softly, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. This doesn't change what we have. You are brave enough to face this. Together we can make changes. Together, we can build something extraordinary. His words ignited a spark within me, a reminder that amid broken pasts, there lay potential for change, for growth. The threads of my story were not individual strands anymore, they had gathered together, composing a tapestry rich with the possibility of understanding, redemption, and healing. I don't know what the future holds, I admitted, swallowing back the swell of emotion. But I want to learn about this. To face it, no matter how horrifying it may be. And perhaps it was that admission, that shared willingness to confront the past, that sparked something profound in the air. The crowd swelled with murmurings of agreement, shoulders shifting as they too recognized the complexities of our connections. They had been thrust into this erratic whirlwind alongside me, fragmented yet united in purpose. Wisps of light filtered through the darkness as we prepared to transcend the shackles of ignorance inherited through years of silence. The need to finally address the truth propelled me into embracing the possibility of reconciliation. In that moment, I perceived the strength of our collective histories. Every whispered secret, every unspoken fear was no longer a burden to bear alone, but rather a shared truth to confront in unity. Together, we would face the inevitable storm, with a promise to advocate for healing and understanding, a commitment to embrace our scars, look towards the light, and rebuild what was once torn apart. As I inhaled deeply, I took a step forward toward my mother, then back towards Kevin. Let's not just fix our legacies. Let's transform them. No more silent burdens, I proclaimed, my voice rising with an unyielding conviction. And there, with the echoes of our histories swirling around us, I felt a profound sense of clarity and purpose take root. Every heart around me beat as one, resonating with courage. The love we shared felt monumental, poised on the precipice of transformation, ready to flourish in ways we had yet to dream. In the quiet aftermath of revelation, it wasn't just the truth that would lead us forward. It was our willingness to face it together, unfurling beneath the weight of our shared narratives. The lesson was clear: healing blossoms in spaces of acknowledgement, and love is ultimately born from the ashes of resilience. So I smiled through the tears and realized the final truth. Sometimes, the fiercest storm bears the promise of a brighter dawn, one that would illuminate the past while nurturing hope for the future. In that moment, I turned and locked eyes with Kevin, my heart whispering the deepest truth of all the love we carried had drawn us together, and would carry us through whatever lay ahead. And as I spoke the words that ignited our journey, I knew we would be forever transformed. Together, we rewrite our story.